Hey guys, it's Katie here with Life the Mundane and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be discussing how to start homeschooling, but not just how to start homeschooling, because there's a lot of videos about that on YouTube, but how to start homeschooling in 2020. In the midst of all this coronavirus stuff, because I'm sorry, whether you just considered homeschooling for the very first time in the last few weeks as you've been faced with the decision of all of the regulations and all of the different restrictions that are coming in the fall, or whether you've been homeschooling or planning to homeschool your whole life, things are going to be different this year. Drastically different this year. And I'm going to share with you guys how to get started and how to take into consideration some of those things that might be different. So let's get started. Okay, so first things first. I am a second generation homeschooler. I grew up homeschooled, my husband grew up homeschooled, and we homeschool our kids. But I remember that first time walking into a homeschool convention or walking in and looking at homeschool curriculum and being overwhelmed. So I can't even imagine how overwhelming this whole process has to be for you. I also want to reassure you before we jump into our tips to just take a deep breath. I know it feels like a lot is hitting you right now, especially if you're having to make the decision about whether to pull your kids from public school or to not enroll them in private or whatever school choice that you had already lined up for this year. The clock is ticking and you're feeling that pressure to make this decision now. Yes, you may have to make the decision sooner than later when it comes to whether or not they will go back to school or not. But if you decide to homeschool, you do not, hear me with this, you do not have to make all the decisions and start schooling right away. Let me explain. Each state has their own laws, and you can look up those laws at the Homeschool Legal Defense Association or hslda.org and find out what homeschool laws apply to your state. If you're in the state of Kansas, I've actually already done a video all about the homeschool laws, explaining them, and also sharing about local resources that you can check out here. That being said, to my knowledge, there is no state in all of the US that requires kids to be in school starting at a certain date and ending at a certain date. Some require a certain amount of hours, some require a certain amount of days, but none of them, to my knowledge, require starting by a certain time and ending by a certain time. And here's why this is a super amazing good thing for you. You may have to make the decision in the next 2 weeks or less about whether or not you want to enroll your kids in a schooling option or whether you want to homeschool. And that's a big decision. If you decide to homeschool, there's a lot more decisions to be made. You've got to pick curriculum, you've got to withdraw your kids from school, you've got to look up laws, you have to figure out where you're going to put all this stuff and how are you going to afford it. There are so many things to consider. Don't overwhelm yourself by trying to squeeze all of that into that 2-week period. Make the decision to homeschool and maybe consider waiting until September to start. Give yourself a little bit of breathing time. Give yourself a little bit of time to actually research and look into this. A lot of us as homeschool moms decide we're going to homeschool far before we actually start. And so we have an opportunity to think through this or to get used to our kids being home. Now, I know a lot of us have gotten used to our kids being home because of all of this COVID craziness, but there are things that are just an adjustment period that your family is going to need, and don't be afraid to give it to yourself. All right? So I'm just going to put that out there. Once you've figured out your homeschool laws, which is very, very important, and I do recommend looking at that every single year to make sure that nothing has changed, you might need to now withdraw your child from the schooling option that you were going to choose. In Kansas, I know that if your child has never been in public school before, currently enrolled in public school or has been in the past, then you don't need to notify the actual school. You just need to register with the state. But if your child is currently enrolled or has been enrolled in the past, usually you need to submit some kind of paperwork to your state to formally withdraw your child. This is an important step because you do not want your child to be marked as truant during this time. And you can find all the details for that and how to do that on that hslda.org website. So be sure to check that out because they can go very much more specific into individual states and their requirements. But don't forget this step. It's important. Also, now that you have looked at the laws and withdrawn your child, you are going to need to consider what to do next as far as curriculum. This can be a little overwhelming, and I understand why, because there are a million and one options, which is a blessing and a curse. It means that we can individualize our education to our child's specific learning style and to my teaching style and to my budget. There are all of these options in all these different categories for you, but I know it can be really overwhelming for when you first start. I am going to drop a link down below with a description of the different learning styles if you guys have heard about them, or the different teaching styles like a Charlotte Mason style or classical or unschooling or all these different things, right? I found a great website that lists all of those out and gives kind of the pros and cons, the strengths and weaknesses of each one. You guys can check that out below. I don't want to dissuade you from doing that. I also don't want to dissuade you from checking into your child's learning style. Are they more kinesthetic, which means they're more hands-on? Are they more auditory? Are they more visual? Those are great pieces of information to have. However, especially if you're making this decision on a little bit of a time crunch, but even if you've had months or years to think about it, it can get overwhelming to do that amount of research. I am an information junkie. I want it all. Just give it to me. I feel more secure, more in control when I have more information. That is not the case for a lot of people. So I want to encourage you that it's not wrong. It can actually be very positive and good to look into those things, but don't get so bogged down into them that it paralyzes you from making decisions. I have seen people who say, wow, I kind of like the Charlotte Mason thing, but I can't buy fully into it. So how do I find a curriculum that kind of fits this and that? Don't worry. Many of us are eclectic. We pick and choose what we like from different curriculums and from different philosophies, and that's okay. All right? So just give yourself a little bit of grace and do your research, but don't let it paralyze you. Now, when it's time to actually jump in, we are going to look at a couple of different factors. And one of those is, I know a lot of people are considering whether they should do public school at home. I want to give a word of caution, advice, I don't know about this, all right? Public school at home is not homeschool. It does not fall under homeschool laws. It does not fall under the homeschool category. It is bringing public school and doing it at home. Homeschooling allows lots and lots of flexibility. You don't have deadlines. You don't have, all this oversight and whatnot in most states. That's what homeschooling is. Public school at home, it can be something that is provided very affordably because the state provides it for you. It can be something where your kids have teachers that they're going to be interacting with and who are going to be doing the teaching, but you will not be under homeschool laws. So keep that in mind. And you will not have that flexibility. There will be hard and fast deadlines. There will be those things. You have to decide what is right for you and your family. But I want to make sure we clarify those terms because I hear a lot of people saying, oh wait, I've got to keep records for homeschooling, or oh wait, I want to, you can do this when you're homeschooling, that's great. And when they're actually doing public school at home. And I don't want you to get in trouble because you're following one definition when you're actually doing another way, or vice versa, okay? So just understand there are pros and cons to both. And I want you to understand what you're getting into and understand what is applicable to you so that you're not getting confused or doing extra research that you don't need to do. All right, so what are some other things you should consider when homeschooling? First of all, what works for one person is not going to work for everybody else necessarily. So great to get input from your friends, from your family members, from Karen on Facebook. Great to get input about it, but do your own research. Look up YouTube videos, preferably ones that share both pros and cons on a curriculum, or find two opposing videos, one where somebody loved it and one where somebody hated it, and listen to their reasoning, because sometimes you can learn a lot of really helpful things from those. For instance, I've seen videos where they're like, this was the worst curriculum ever because it was scripted, which means that all of the teacher text was there. It's like, this is in bold. You read this, you pause here, the child answers here. And it was incredibly scripted. Well, that's something I actually personally like. So even though it was the reason why they hated it, it was the reason why I would like it. So be sure to kind of look at all the sides of the coin on that one. Also, if you can get to a homeschool convention, or if you have the ability to borrow or look through any of the curriculum, there is nothing that beats flipping through the curriculum. You will learn a lot more about it that way than you will looking online on their website. But if you can't do that, flip throughs on YouTube are a great way to check it out because they're going to show you beyond what the sales pages are showing you. Another thing to consider with homeschooling curriculum is that you may not get it right the first time. It's not completely abnormal, guys. Sorry to say. There's a lot of factors to go into it, and you need to do the best you can. The truth is, you can homeschool with any curriculum. It's just some are going to make it easier or be better for your child or be better for you than others. So your budget may prevent you from getting this curriculum that you think is the most amazing thing in the world. I promise you can still teach your kid to read with cheaper options that you can homeschool with any curriculum. There are free curriculums out there, even options for not having a curriculum, and just getting things from the library and piecing together your own unit studies and things like that. And guys, there are pros and cons to all of that. You can homeschool. If God calls you to it, he's going to equip you for it. If he calls you to it, he is going to give you the means to do it. All right? It may not be as pretty as you hope it will be. It's definitely not going to be as perfect as you're dreaming it will be. But if he's called you for it, he will work it out and it will be okay. So I want you to stop stressing too much about the perfect fit. Do your research. Look into it. Don't follow blindly, but don't, again, be paralyzed by all of those decisions. A box curriculum might be a good option for you. And what that basically means is that you can get all or most of your subjects from one box organization, from one organization. So examples of this would be like Abeka, Sunlight, My Father's World, Master Books, things like that, where you can get all of your subjects from one company. I personally, like I said, I'm eclectic. I like to pull and pick from what different companies and different resources. And so that's not the best fit for me. But I'm a second generation homeschooler. I grew up doing this. I've tried a bunch of these curriculums. I also have been homeschooling for many years, for 5, almost 6 years now. And so I've got some years under my belt and I understand what I like or don't like about certain curriculums. When you're starting out, it might be best to just start with one of these box curriculums because they're going to be scripted for you. They're going to tell you what to read when and give you the whole schedule. You're going to understand how math, Bible, science, all of these tie in together, right? And these are all very different though. Even within all these box curriculums, they're different. Abeka and Master Books are much more textbook oriented. They're going to be more fill in the blank workbooks, right? You are going to go to something like My Father's World and you're going to get something that's a lot more hands-on, project oriented. You go into Bookshark or Sunlight. Bookshark is just the secular version of Sunlight. Those are going to be much more literature based. All of them will have components of each, but they're heavier on one or the other. So do some research into those and figure out which one you think might be the best fit for you. All right, so we have got you set up and you've looked at your laws, you've taken your kids out of school, you have gone through the curriculum process and picked that out, and now we've got to look at how to get plugged in. This is a challenge, guys. 2020 is gonna make this really hard. All of this coronavirus stuff is going to make it interesting because truthfully, homeschoolers, despite what you may have heard, are incredibly socialized. Typically, we are involved in sports, in church, in community outreach opportunities, play dates, co-ops. We're part of 4 different co-ops, guys, which a co-op is just a homeschool cooperative. It's a group or people, maybe 1, maybe 2, maybe 10, maybe 50, that come together for a common purpose, right? That come together to learn or to socialize or to whatever, right? We're part of 4 of them normally. I don't know how many are going to get to happen this year. This is going to be a little bit more challenging to connect. If you have a homeschool convention that you're able to go to, I highly recommend doing so because you can connect with people face to face there. But if you aren't, because I know this year a lot of them got canceled, you can reach out to your local homeschool organizations. You can just Google the state you are in and homeschool organizations, and it will pull up organizations usually for most states, and you can reach out to them and ask them what local resources are available. Are there classes at your local library or museum or things like that that you can take part in? Do they have a list of co-ops in your area? They also can help connect you one-on-one, usually with another homeschool family that has offered to kind of be a mentor. And this gives a great opportunity. I really recommend that even if you're not able to join in on the typical activities because of restrictions in your area or personal feelings about the virus, that you at least connect with somebody online. There are many Facebook groups out there that are fantastic. I will drop a few of my favorites down below in the description of this video, but I really recommend you reaching out. And don't forget to get your kids out and to get them that socialization, even if you have to think outside of the box to do that. This is a tough one because we don't want to expose our kids unnecessarily, but my kids are really used to having a lot of social time. So being home all the time has been really, really challenging. We still get to go to church right now, which is a huge blessing. But one of the things we did for one of our co-ops is that every other Friday we would get together with one other family, typically, and we would do science experiments together. And we would share, we were both picking the same science curriculum, and we get together and we discuss what we had learned and we do an experiment together. And it was so fun. But when the coronavirus hit, we moved that to digital. And so we did an online Zoom type call every other Friday. We would share our screen and watch a YouTube video together with the kids, maybe do an experiment on our both ends or have one side do it and the other side watch. And the kids would share what they had been learning. This worked out pretty well. Is it as good as meeting in person? No. But it worked out pretty well. And then the kids got to chit chat and just hang out afterwards. You could do this with book clubs. You could do this with all sorts of things. You can do online classes for your kids. There are a lot of options out there, guys, like I said. And so I want you guys to be aware of those, but just be aware you might have to go outside the box a little bit. Could you schedule some, play dates? Maybe you can't go to the park, but could you do something in your backyard or your front yard? Consider getting the app Marco Polo and letting your kids talk to their friends that way. We do that, but it's on our devices, so we have control and access to when they're using it, and they know that we can and will watch whatever is sent back and forth, but they enjoy getting to hang out and talk with their friends that way and show them their Lego creations or talk about something they've learned. And it's been really, really great opportunity for them to still get to connect one-on-one. But just understand that this is a really different year, and this is going to be different. We don't know what it's going to look like. There are a lot of homeschool co-ops that I've heard about that are going to continue meeting in the fall, but they will just be taking precautions or taking maybe slightly different measurements, that they'll be meeting, at the early August to October, but then after Thanksgiving, they're going to go more remote and then come back again after cold and flu season. There's just a lot of different possibilities out there, but understand that you can find those connections, and I would encourage you to seek it out because you don't want to be homeschooling on your own. You don't want to be an island. You need someone who you can reach out to when you're having a rough day and you just need to talk it out or you have questions. So be sure to connect. The last thing I will say when it comes to how to start homeschooling right now, understand that you are homeschooling. You are not doing school at home. You do not need a perfect schoolroom setup with your whiteboard and your desks and all of these supplies. Yes, I have a few of those. And yes, I've enjoyed a homeschool room from time to time for sure, but it's not absolutely necessary. And if you try to mimic what they do in public school or private school at home, you're probably going to end up frustrating yourself and your kids. Allow yourself the flexibility to understand that this is going to look the way it needs to look for you and your family. So you may have a child who is in 3rd grade in everything except for math, which they're struggling with, and they're at a 2nd grade level. You can still keep your child in 3rd grade and give them a 2nd grade curriculum for math and give them 3rd grade for everything else. There is flexibility there. You can do your school outside or on the couch or in the car or at the table. There's a lot of ways that this can work for you if you let it. So I could say so much more, but I hope that those things will at least help get your mind going. And if you have other questions, please reach out to me. I'm happy to help you guys. You can check out my email address is down below, as well as I'm on Facebook and Instagram and all those fun things, so you guys can reach out at any point. My whole channel is all about homeschooling and home management and parenting stuff. So I'm sure if you guys look around, there'll be some other videos that you could check out that would be helpful to you guys as you start this process. And also go to my website, www.lifeinthemundane.com/how to start, and there you will find a whole list of resources. This is a brand new part of my website that just rolled out this week, sharing with you guys resources for those who are getting ready to start. All those quizzes, all those how do you find out your learning style, all those things are on there, as well as videos that will help you get started. And so I hope you guys will check it out, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.